a sense of identity is hugely important. And bringing this back to families that own businesses, so often we are working with families who see a succession on the horizon with the family business. Now, it might be a sale of the business, it might be a changing of the guard, it might be a generational change in leadership, but the sale of the business is really important. It's important for the family to explore both the business history and the family history. I was working with one family, with Kristen Armstrong, actually, who Emily mentioned before. And there were 4 siblings. 2 of the brothers ran the business, and the sisters trusted the brothers to make the decisions about the business. And they decided to sell the business. And almost the day after the contracts were all signed and before the ink was even dried, the locks were changed on the business. And the brothers couldn't get in. And all of a sudden, they couldn't get to any archives. They couldn't get to any documents. And there was this huge vacuum. Their everyday life had been completely overturned, and they hadn't saved any of it. They hadn't done the work to make sure that they had that history. That's one thing that was going on. And they began to question a little bit about, well, if we had done that work about exploring our business and the principles that went into how we ran the business and some of the legacy ideas that we had around what we would like that business to be in the future, might have affected who they sold the business to. So that was one whole element of it. But now that the family was no longer owned the business and wasn't operating the business and didn't take for granted this business as sort of the organizing principle around their meetings and their decisions and their finances, but instead they were a family of wealth, they're a family wealth enterprise, the sisters really wanted to be a part of the decision making around how the wealth was going to be invested, what kind of legacy the family was going to make. And there, the family history was so important. The women, they knew that stuff, and they found their voices in expressing who the family was. And the brothers were a little bit like, yeah, oh, yeah, right. They were a little bit lost about it. So they stumbled into doing the family history, and they very much wish that they had done it beforehand. Kind of like Emily was saying, you know, when her mother passed away, all of a sudden the family didn't know how to have these conversations and didn't know the stories. That's been a fascinating thing for me as a historian in this field is, you know, I take for granted that most of the people I deal with are dead. You know, we're like looking back afterwards, but for the families, it's so important to begin to explore this before those major milestones happen. So they're grounded, they understand collectively who they are, and then where they're individuals too. It's okay to have that balance, but to really be prepared for these major milestone events. So it's been really fun and rewarding to figure out that part of history. That's where it's like the application of history into real world situations, you know, nothing like in the moment.